Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to the London AI Conference 2024. My name is Adam from Startup Network Europe. I am from Ireland, and I've hosted 160 events since 2021. So 160, here we are, really important number. And we're hosting this event, of course, with IBM. I'm really grateful for them. Such a historic company. It's our first event here. And also with Arrow, and also with Bowmen Group. So it's going to be a great event today. I have a question for the audience, and we'll also connect with the online audience. Who here is an AI startup founder? Cool. Who here is an AI investor? Cool. Who here is an AI tech leader? Cool. And an AI product leader? Cool. And who here is other? Yeah. Other is super important. So we do events, lots of events, Irish Startup Conference, Dutch Startup Conference, lots of different events, Ukraine Startup Conference, European Startup Conference, European AI Conference, 2023 and 2024. And we even go to Greece every summer to bring along founders. But for today, we have a very exciting panel. We have Georgina, CTO of William Hill. If you'd like to make your way over here, please. Thank you. Yeah, that's fine. And then we have Tugce, who is joining online because we have train strikes today in London. We also have Martyna from Fiat Republic. Thank you. And we have Alex, Supervisory Board Member at Lewis Dreyfus Company. And Nick, Fractional Chief Product Officer and exited co-founder of Cloudmade. And then we also have Manjari, who is joining us all the way from Oxford. So the six panel members, you are very welcome. So let's kick off. Georgina, thank you so much.
Now I've got am I on? Yeah, I'm on. Okay. Thank you so much. And thank you everybody for allowing me to be here and to host this panel today. We can see both of our online members as well, so we will be interacting between all of us. We want to make this as interactive as possible with you guys as well, so more than happy to take questions throughout rather than wait till the end. I don't know whether we'll have a roving mic. Will we do a roving mic for questions? Okay, perfect. So if anyone has any questions, then please feel free to put up your hand. I have 9 questions to go through with the panel, but we'll see how it goes. We'll be flexible and go with the flow and make sure that it's really interesting for all of you guys. So one of the things that I want to start with, and I think it's a really big question at the moment, AI. Does it really live up to the myth that exists out there today? Is it as big and wonderful as everybody's saying it is, and it's going to transform all of our businesses? So I am going to start, I'm going to go easy and start on my right with Nick.
So I think the answer is pretty straightforward. Yes, it is going to transform all of our businesses. It's not optional. It's everyone's heard this. It's a foundational technology. It's going to change everything. I think one of the things that's quite interesting we're seeing with AI, though, is that some of the previous tech waves, whether it's the internet or mobile, the existing companies really fare quite badly. So the incumbents did quite badly. I think there's very strong reasons to think that the incumbents are going to do very well from this wave of AI because they control very well structured data and they control access to their customers. So I believe, yes, AI is living up to the hype, and also it could be quite a different revolution we see this time round to the ones we've seen in the previous 10 or 20 years.
Okay, good. Thank you. I'm not going to argue with that just yet, but I might do in a moment.
Come back later.
Come back later. Let's go over to the end.
Okay, so I'm going to be a little bit controversial. The way I tend to answer this is yes and no. And there is a word in German for people that speak German that's fantastic, Jein, which means yes and no. And why do I say yes and no? AI has been here forever and a day, yes, before most of us here were born. I think people confuse the term of AI with the reality, which is just advancement in technology. And everything we do, from your phones in your pocket, you have some AI. Back in the 90s, the pricing engines that run the financial systems, they were AI. So it's here, it's always been, it's just advancing and advancing at a pace that we've never seen before. And the reason for that is because we have better computer power now. But at the same time, what we need to make sure is that the humans among us are actually taking to the journey with us, because they are the ones that are going to utilize the technology. And I think AI is only going to live to its hype if we can take our human colleagues alongside the journey with us.
Brilliant, thank you. Let's go online. Tugce.
I think I agree with a lot of things that Alex captured. We are very excited because since the invention of the internet, this is the most transformational breakthrough that we have seen in our lives. What that means is, in the next 5 to 10 years, every single consumer interface will be redone. And that basically becomes an immense opportunity for technology companies and for startups to be able to redefine and transform how consumers interact, to book holidays, to book trips, to find love, for matchmakers, for dating, for shopping. We're going to see a lot more chatbots, and quite smart chatbots, who are helping us with these interactions.
Brilliant, thank you. Maybe we can get onto the robot dating later. So, Manjari, what do you think?
Thanks a lot for organizing this online. The trains did not cooperate from Oxford this morning. Yeah, I think it is super exciting. Amadeus, we're a global technology investor, and we focus on deep tech and have been focusing for the last 26 years. And so we've seen these waves of AI itself. We've seen waves of technology, but we've seen waves of AI itself. It was the language, at the very nascent stages, the text understanding, all the way to the generational models now. So I think, AI's been through a number of cycles, that's a fact. But I think it's right now come a lot more to the consciousness because of generational AI. Having said that, there's so many other facets of AI. So, I'm actually more excited on those areas, the ones that don't require as much compute, the ones that don't require as much data, and are perhaps, sort of a lot more focused as a consequence on bounded problems than the generational foundational models.
Okay, thank you. Martyna, I'm going to come to you and let's get your view on that, but also move forward slightly and talk about regulations as well, and the impact of AI in a regulated industry.
First of all, I think in terms of just AI, yes, it's going to take off. And I think part of the reason is because it's been around for ages. It wasn't maybe applied because we didn't have the computational power to do it. But I mean, the algorithm and all of that comes from like 40s or 50s. So it's something that was well thought through, something that people have been sitting on for years and researching. And right now that finally we've got the cloud, we can deploy all the models, we can test on all the data, we are able to store so much information. It's much more interesting. As for the regulations itself, it's tricky because I think AI itself is not yet regulated. So it can be quite hard to bring it into a regulated business, especially since if you think about like talking to auditors, which are always, let's face it, a couple of years behind. So you can imagine that you're applying for something and they're asking like, oh, you didn't put what is the email server for you because you put Google Workspace and you didn't put Microsoft Exchange. Is this type of thing. So I think with AI is very similar that people who are on the regulator side of things are not necessarily eager to jump on the AI train. That's mainly because it's not regulated. We don't know who owns what and who is responsible for the decision that the AI is making. So I think once we address those issues, who is responsible for what, when building different AI products, we can talk about bringing AI into the regulated businesses and applying them. So it's all about responsibilities here.
On the panel, anyone else got a view on the AI in the regulated industry or any experiences that you want to share?
You know, I actually just came this afternoon from working with a founder of a medical devices company. I think there's some good points that it isn't all about generative AI. And this is a UK company called Lighthearted, which has created a medical device that using imaging can read heart rate very, very accurately. And that's a great example, right, of where a highly regulated environment, medical, AI, not necessarily Gen AI, but all of the different offshoots and building blocks of AI is creating, is transforming, it's saving costs, saving lives. Last year in the US alone, about 230 AI-powered medical devices were approved by the FDA. So like 230 devices in 1 year using some form of AI within them. So, you know, highly regulated environment, it's clearly happening there as well.
Yeah. And I think as long as you get down to the nitty-gritty of what it is that you're doing and delivering, rather than focus on the AI tag and think about what you have to do to be regulated, then follow the procedure, then you can get the regulation. But I think people get scared that maybe, oh my God, AI, we can't regulate it. But it's again, taking away the myth layer and just saying, well, you know, we're not really doing anything different. We're just using technology in a slightly different way. So there's no reason why we shouldn't be able to use it within a regulated industry. And having spent many, many, many hours looking at gambling regulations and legislation and kind of what we have to do and what we have to comply with, you know, I know that it is possible. You've just got to explain it to the regulator. So there's a big education thing here. Anybody in the audience want to just touch on the regulation before we move off at all onto the next question? Happy to take a question over here.
Testing. Yeah, cool.
Hi, my name is Drishti. I'm a founder of Tugce.ai. We are a social sustainability data platform. My question around regulation is really like, how do you kind of harmonize this? We know that we have the EU AI Act. Certain activities using algorithms are now classified as high risks, and some are kind of medium risk and all. So if I'm a UK company and I'm servicing the whole world, how do I harmonize that difference in regulations in different jurisdictions? That's my question.
Good question. I knew you would. I knew you would want to jump in here. Go ahead.
Thank you very much. So I worked most of my career in regulated environments, and I think the EU legislation that came up is fantastic, because it's not really trying, like Georgina just mentioned, it's not really trying to tell people how to use AI and what to do with AI. It's really trying to prevent the side effects. So we don't want anybody to be given information that is not accurate or is presented to people in a way that are going to help them making the wrong decisions. So if you leave to the spirit of the EU legislation, which in my opinion is really good and is the beginning, and all of us need to continue to contribute to it, to continue to protect people using the technology, I think the key thing is not thinking about harmonizing AI legislations around the globe, is ensuring that your business is operating with the right level of ethics and ensuring that your business complies with all the legislations that make your business an ethical business. I think that is a little bit like you just mentioned, Georgina, the confusion between, oh, let's legislate AI. What we need to legislate is good practices for business, is take care of consumers. And I think as soon as we start talking about that, I think we're going to be much better for it. AI is just a new technology. The next thing could be virtual reality and so on.
Yeah. And knowing how many different regulations there are globally, it's very difficult to have one size fits all. So I think, you know, that's always going to be the case when you're trying to be compliant. Is there anybody else on the panel that wants to jump in on that?
Yeah, I'd love to chime in here. So, you know, this is something that a lot of our portfolio companies actively look at, and you know, as board directors, we have a duty of care as well. But just as you know, sort of Alex said, one of the things that we have found, despite the different geographies approaching the regulations in quite, sort of different manners. And that can be very daunting for a startup. So, I can't see the person who asked the question, but hats off to you to really plow through the nitty-gritties. Having said that, it does come back to the ethics of it all. If you've collected the data in the right manner, if you are able to prove that at every step that you are really focusing on a very ethical way of doing it, I think it really does help in handling a lot of those regulations, because that's really where everybody's worried about, and that addresses that problem.
Okay, good. Now we've mentioned ethics, and it's not a nice to have, and we've got privacy issues, we've got bias issues, we've got data protection. So there's a whole load of things that we need to consider in this space. Let's get some views from the panel here on how you're approaching this. And Tugce, shall we go to you first?
Yeah, happy to. I think different spaces have very different rules in that regard. So if you are working with generative AI, the first thing is better to work on results that are not vital, right? So when we look at the medical space, if you want to get recognized as a medical device and you might be making diagnosis decisions that can actually influence lives, that's a very high bar, and generative AI is not ready for that. We can work towards that, but you are not going to get the approvals, and you shouldn't get the approvals. But there are a lot of things that are subclinical. For example, in healthcare, we can work, right? One of them is we are working with a company right now where we are trying to facilitate saving doctors' times. We know how overwhelmed NHS is, and if we can save 30% time for every doctor every day, by facilitating note-taking, summarization, report creation, sending automatically report to patients, the stakes are not as high. It's not diagnosis, it's not a medical device, but it still saves a lot of time. So we recommend that way usually of working, that you need to be able to tolerate hallucinations, because it is going to happen at this stage. We can't fully control it. So instead, let's start with solutions that are still human controlled. Human is still fully in the loop, but it does increase the efficiency of humans.
Okay, thank you, Martyna.
So I think when it comes down to ethics, it's not only how AI is applied, but also what it can do to like workforce and everybody. So it's also the fact that, well, if you think that previously you would need to have, I don't know, 40 people in a room that are trying to assign 5,000 different tasks to people among the company, and right now you don't need that because the AI system can do it like within a second. You need to think what it does actually to your company. So how it changes it, how it transforms it. And I think that's also one part of it. And then it comes down to ethics, is what you said. It's pretty much, you just need to think it's not AI that's evil. It's like people who control the AI, people who actually are creating the products. So it's really important where AI is going to be applied and how each company is going to actually use it. Because for now, probably it should be all about how you mentioned, Tugce. It's about like optimization. It's about kind of like cutting some time, like making sure that we don't waste certain time on tasks when performed by computers are simply faster and better done. So we just control the results a little bit, right? Double check one because we know what we're looking for, but instead of wasting 5 hours, we can get it within 5 seconds. So it's all about, in my mind, it's all about the ownership and control.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the same as dogs, right? Dogs are not naturally evil, but if they're trained to be evil, then they will be. And, we've got the same situation here.
Tina, just to add one more thing that I don't think people really consider in terms of the ethics, is it takes a lot of CPU to run AI, and it takes a lot of cooling devices to cool those CPUs. And the emission of CO2 is something that is not really taken care when people are thinking about expansion of AI. And I think there is an element there in ethics where we need to ensure that we are not making the sustainability of the planet a little bit worse as a result of those machines.
I'll hold that thought because we have that as a question, but do you want to go on ethics?
Sorry.
I was going to go on that point.
Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
I'll start with ethics. So back in like the 2000s, I was building a location-based services platform. We used to have lots of conferences like this where people would debate location privacy endlessly. Then I moved to Silicon Valley in 2011, and no one cared about location privacy. They just built the apps. And you had Facebook location services, you had Foursquare, you had Google. They all just went and did it. And where are all of those European startups that were debating privacy, right? So I'm not saying we shouldn't bother thinking about ethics by any means, but we're operating in this globalized market. So we have to understand what's going to create a winner. And isn't it better to create a big global winner that is then able to take things in the, what we happen to think the good direction is, rather than to fail because we spend all of our time concerned about the kind of downside rather than the upside? I think this also leads on to the next question quite nicely, which is, what is the role of the government here? So I think in the energy question is a really important one. Generating images in particular, like the cost of that inference is massive. You can move inference to the edge, but there still needs to be power to power it. There are some data centers that have renewable power, but it's extremely difficult to go out there and buy compute time at scale that comes from renewable power, close to impossible. So what power do us individuals have as founders, as consumers to impact this? Very, very little. And this is why governments exist, because there are problems where the local optima and the global optima are different. So I think we can take some responsibility, but we also need our elected officials to really get on with this and accelerate the transition to green energy, because AI is not going away.
It's not going away, but I think there's also, we can take a little responsibility by maybe thinking about how we build things, how much experimentation we do, how much if you think about a large corporation where you start to make it freely available to everybody, and there was something recently that I was involved in, they were talking about the amount of wasted data that exists out there, and actually I sat there and I thought, oh my God, I've got everything on Google OneDrive, 2 OneDrives and all the different places, and it's all the same documents, it's all the same photos, and if I just cut all that down by a third, and likewise, I think with these tools, potentially, if you don't give them to everybody, maybe we can be a bit responsible about it.
I would like to think so, but there's a reason why the government step in and ban vapes, right, or enforce recycling, because if you make recycling voluntary, you get a tiny subset, like 95% of the people in this room and maybe 5 to 10% of the population as a whole who really engage in it. So I think you can be a role model, but I also think it needs some regulatory input.
Okay, what about the rest of the panel? Because this is a really interesting point, I think.
For the energy, I think there's 2 sides to the equation. It's not just about how much we consume, but how much we can cut. So if you think about a company, how much energy it actually needs to run its operations, and then you optimize those operations, then you make sure that you're not spending so much time on certain tasks and so on and so forth, you're going to realize that perhaps the energy that was used to optimize all of that was equal to the energy that was actually cut out from the company itself. So maybe it's going to even itself out, but the company is going to be able to focus to build more interesting things and not focus on menial tasks. So I think it depends exactly how all of that is calculated, and I don't think we have enough data as of now actually to say anything about it.
I don't think this is a new problem at all, right? I agree with you that you need to build a global company, and you need some global winners from Europe. So obviously we do want to build such large companies. But historically, before ESG came about, there were companies who were trying to build, become global companies, but also inherently had a real sense of, I want to do something for the environment, right? In every company that I've worked with, we have a lot of travel as venture investors. We always try to take the train. I could have potentially driven in today. I didn't, right? We opted to find another way of doing it, and hats off to the organizers that they have. But it's that kind of, I think every little bit helps. And so I agree with you that needs to be regulation. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be, but I don't think it's a new problem. It's just the definition of the problem keeps changing as we learn more.
I can actually add a little bit more on that. I think it's important we need the regulation for more on the bias side. For example, there's an online question here about data bias. And if we are going to use, for example, diagnosis of criminal activity, what data we are using, very important. But when it comes to GPU usage, we already have a lot of law about carbon emissions. And what we need here is a good pricing system, and market can take care of this. GPUs are not cheap. So whatever business you are running, you need to be able to create significantly more value than the compute you are consuming for you to survive. So I think when we think about regulation, it's probably better to focus on protection of data, privacy, and matters like bias, rather than worrying too much about, government also telling us how many GPUs can we use.
Okay, anybody in the audience want to jump in on this one before we move forward?
I have actually two questions. I have actually two questions. One is regarding the regulation of data, MPI, and one is regarding the CO2 emissions. So for the second one, the CO2 emission, do you think we will be seeing in the future maybe regulations that restrict the use of AI to apps that have actually a positive impact on society, and trying to restrict maybe those that are less impactful, like in terms of AI applied in a university or in medical sector, rather than AI that generate, I don't know, a better version of my selfie?
I really hope not, because all of that is a value judgment. So this is the problem with the way reinforcement learning is used in training LLMs, that it's very subjective. That's someone's view on what good and bad is, the reward and the punishment. And there needs to be much more transparency on that. But it's bad enough that being controlled by a handful of big companies. That's controlled by a government. The ability for that government to then tell us what good or bad is and build that into the fabric of the AI is pretty terrifying. So the idea that the government would decide what app should succeed or not, I mean, I think that sounds like the kind of economies we've moved away from. So I hope we don't get to that.
And the other question is regarding PI. So basically, my company is developing an application that uses Gen AI. And basically, the product of this Gen AI is videos created from motorsport teams that then are customized and enhanced for the end users based on the user data. In this, we had some problems related to who has the PI of the end video, because the team, basically the motorsport team, provided the initial video, but then is the user end user data that create a custom version and a tailored version of that video. In this context, who's gonna own the PI of that content?
Do you mean PI or IP?
IP, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, IP, sorry.
Okay.
I think it's a fascinating question, and one that I don't think we have an answer yet. So I don't know if people are following, of course, you probably are following the developments of OpenAI. And the interesting thing is that Microsoft is underwriting all their the IP created by OpenAI, and they are saying if you utilize OpenAI APIs, ChatGPT, or whatever it is, and you create a product, that product belongs to you. And if you are in a situation where there is a challenge, Microsoft is underwriting that, and that is the principles behind Copilot. I don't know where that is going to end up. I think it's a space that we all need to watch, and we need to be careful because it could land anyway.
Yeah, I think we'll see a lot of lawyers appearing that will be starting to go into it. But I guess anybody here that's building a product where there is an IP issue, think about it right from the beginning. And ask yourself those questions and get the right contracts in place so that if you want to hold on to the IP, then make sure that you do. So it's a really good question. Thank you.
I think there is a lot of sort of background, not necessarily in this space, but if you just look at the patent world and anything that has contracts to it, it's very clear, right? The patents that existed before that each party brings to whatever product comes under background IP, and the rest of it that's created is foreground IP. So there is precedence, but it's unfortunate that it's still not fully in place for this particular situation. But it is possible if you do get IP lawyers involved. It is at least possible to mitigate some of the risk.
And I guess we'll start to see some cases coming up, and then we'll start to see some precedents set. And
yeah, but it's going to be very interesting, right? Because what happens if, for example, you get a lookalike of one of the racing teams? You train your model on someone who does an amazing impersonation of Lewis Hamilton. Then you can trace the IP. The background IP comes from that person. They own it. You own the rights. But you then wouldn't be able to pass that off as Lewis Hamilton. So we're entering into this world when LLMs are really sentiment machines, not fact machines, right? We're moving from databases that reproduce facts. The raw data of the sort of raw language of an LLM is about sentiment. It's about connecting meaning together. So I think as these things get into court, we're going to see some quite new rulings go on.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay, let's shift a little bit. So can AI help startups to get to market quicker? And can you be technology illiterate, if that's the right way of putting it? So you don't really need technical people anymore. You just go out there and you can just use AI and get your product to market. So I'm going to open it up. Anybody on the panel, jump in.
I think that, yes, it starts with funding. So I think especially in the current market, everybody hears like Gen AI, okay, let's invest. Which means like probably on the investor side, you need to really watch out like whether the AI bit in all of that brings value or it's just a buzzword. But ultimately, I think that yes, it's going to help. I don't think you can be, not proficient in tech to build something very complex. But I think it depends on the market that you're aiming for, because it depends where the value in your product lies, right? And how quickly do you want to start? Because go to market, it doesn't mean you are able to have thousands of customers. It can mean that you could be B2B, you could build something and still run things in a manual fashion in the back office, but you brought value to the companies and you're able to have something that works. You are able to have something that generates revenue and build on top of that and then bring others on board later on. I think Gen AI and AI as a whole is going to change it a little bit. You can see it even in places like, let's build a website. It used to be a hassle. You had to have developers, you had to have people that were able to do it for you. Right now, you go on, you write a few questions like, please do this, this, and that, and suddenly you have a website, your business is online. So I think that change is going to come also from AI in the future, and it's going to change a little bit how we're going to be bringing things to market. But I think it all depends on the complexity of the product itself. Yeah.
But I guess maybe the second part of your question was about the technical talent, and we had quite interesting discussions about that, both in my previous business and Alchemy.ai that I'm building now. And if there are any engineers in the room who are worried about their jobs, do not worry. You are not going to lose your jobs. We still desperately need engineers to build technology for us. Again, it comes back to the efficiency, right? Totally agree. You can go to market faster. I think what we built in my previous company with 50 people, we now build with 5 people. And we got to the same stage in 3 months instead of 12 months. So that's amazing. You are faster. You can build more with a smaller team. But can you really unleash as a business the power of large language models without any Python, without any sort of ML ops or LLM ops? That's really hard. The problem is what we call thin wrappers. You can take the GPT, you can put a no-code thin wrapper around GPT, and let's say you have a wine recommendation business, right? The problem with all of those, they are utterly, indefensible. Like you cannot actually hold on to your product. In the same way you did it with no code in a day, someone else will too. So how are you going to really differentiate that product? Real technology still requires engineers.
I'm going to chime in here as the investor here. I agree that a lot of investors like to invest sort of wrapper tools, especially with Gen AI as its base. But deep tech investors like ourselves do not, because exactly to Tugce's point, right? It's not defensible. So there's perhaps a first mover advantage to these companies, but that is very easily eroded unless there is perhaps a completely new business model that takes off, et cetera, et cetera. So as a technology company, I think you absolutely need defensible IP, for which you need a lot of technical depth within the workforce, and you just can't possibly do this as a wrapper on foundational models. The other point I'd like to make is, the other day somebody was asking me whether I was encouraging my kids to learn coding, because what's the point, right? ChatGPT is going to throw out all the code. What's the point? And it's the same as, do you need paralegals now? Because it would absolutely be able to do what a paralegal does. And I think yes and no, because, it's able to do some portions of it, but obviously it's not going to replace an entire industry. It's not going to replace all lawyers. There is going to be a need that we have to train more paralegals to actually get to the point of a full lawyer. And so I don't think, we need to say that anybody absolutely needs to be replaced. You're still going to need humans in the loop. You're just going to get things done faster, better with AI.
I'm actually getting quite scared about how many examples we've got of how we're going to do things faster. I think we go pretty damn fast already. Going faster, it's just like, oh my God. Maybe we can have more holidays. How about that? We go much faster and have a lot of holidays. That would be good. Alex, do you want to?
Yeah, so I was just going to build on both Manjari's and T's. I think there is a change happening, that technology before, it was a skill that some people had. I think as we go along, everybody needs to know, and everybody needs to have that skill set. Because how can a chief executive officer manage a company without that knowledge? Because they are not going to be able to identify the best opportunities. So I think it's a little bit of a change here. I think hopefully for all the techs out there, I think there will be a lot more techies, and I'm super excited about that.
Yeah, just a first final thought. What I would encourage all the startup founders and operators here to do is, yes, leverage the hell out of all the AI tools for internal productivity. But we often mix up the internal productivity conversation with the building a product that users love conversation. So try and partition that. Do some activities to make you more productive, get more stuff done, get to market faster, reduce costs, and so on. But separate that off from your product strategy, from how are you going to use all of the AI that's out there to delight your users? How are you going to build differentiation? How are you going to build defensibility? And I think when you start to partition things that way, the question starts to answer itself. Tremendous opportunities for value creation and for defending that value.
Let's go to the audience on that one. Have we got any questions? Is anybody really upset now because they're going to have to go and hire a bunch of developers that they didn't think they were going to have to hire?
Testing. Yeah.
Hi, I just have a quick question in regards to the AI. To me, it seems like interacting, with the AI, if you develop an AI product on the consumer end or on, the personal individual user, I think they're going to need an AI bot themselves in order to interact and to filter through. And I think the biggest difference when you use AI is that it's really about being a good editor. And once you teach the AI how to edit in your taste or in your view, I think it can come very close. Not exact, but in that way. But how do you see that in terms of, do you see two AI models that are, or I guess, I don't know what you call them, but interacting?
So agents, people are calling this.
Right, or like
digital
cookies.
Twins.
Yeah.
I think we're already seeing this, right? Who's using Otter or Fireflies here for note-taking? Anyone use that, right? So I had a meeting scheduled with me on Monday. They didn't obviously realize it was a bank holiday or didn't care because it was a global thing. I didn't need to show up because my Otter went there, recorded it, and then it's got a transcription, but it then has a sort of ChatGPT-like interface where I can talk to the transcription and I can ask it what actions there are, what it thinks I should do. So we're very close to having that. And the next logical step from that, right, is that AI knows a few things about me. It knows the questions I like to ask, and it butts in for me in that call, and I don't even have to show up. So I definitely see, our agents will be out there acting on our behalf.
Do you see that? Oh, sorry, just one follow-up to that. Do you think that's coming through mobile, like through an Apple ID or Google ID?
So this is really interesting, right? And this is where I'm a bit skeptical on the 80 billion valuation of OpenAI, because they don't control access to the consumer. I mean, their app store is hyper limited inside a browser. It can't do very much. You have Microsoft dominating the enterprise, Apple and Google in the West dominating mobile. So yeah, I think that has to come through mobile, but we're really yet to see the big play from Apple and really the big play from Google to make that happen.
Thanks.
I was talking to a chief exec of a company, and he was actively training let's call it his avatar, by constantly feeding in articles that he wrote, emails that he was sending, just everything about himself, with the intention to basically build an avatar of him to do things. Not sure where he was going to do that or how he was going to deploy it, but he was certain that was the way to go, and that he saw that as being a very valuable thing to do. So what about the rest of the panel?
I might chime in here. I love the way you called editor. And I think we don't use that word enough. I love all the ideas about AI, but we're not going to let them run free, right? If I'm doing a due diligence on a deal, I'm not going to let my AI avatar to make the decision on my behalf. I will, of course, get the AI to do some of that data gathering for me, and then I'm going to edit with my own decision. And it might just be because I'm a little bit old-fashioned, but I think that level of editorial is what is the differentiation between what the technology can do to augment our skill set and our experience. But I don't know, but I'm open to see what is going to happen.
Well, let's face it. I mean, how many of us have been involved in due diligence exercises and fall asleep on page 65? I mean, somebody can go through and read that and summarize, and you can train, the engine to pull out your own concerns. For me, that's going to be a massive help. What about the rest of the panel?
I completely agree. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Go for it.
No, I think coming back to the digital twins, because it's actually a very interesting subject, as even right now we have certain pilot programs where bigger companies are trying to create digital twins of all the employees and are using that to, let's say, ask those digital twins, what would you do if you work in a different team? How would you behave? What would happen? And so on and so forth. So I think it's going to be used even to answer the questions how to run the company, not just can you do something instead of me, but just to be better informed instead of asking the, let's say, original person the same question.
Lots of product teams are using it to load user research data into as well, and then you can build AI personas. And instead of needing to go out and do a panel, you have a live conversation with your persona.
Exactly.
I love that.
Manjari.
I was just going to say, we were actually discussing this in a venture group as to, we don't write very long investment memos. We do only about 20, 25 pages, not the 60-page ones deliberately. But equally, without realizing, a lot of us have our favorite set of concerns because of the scars we've had on our own portfolio of investments. And quite often, you won't realize you have this pattern, but the room around you who have sat with you on investment committees over the years pick up. They're like, okay, Manjari's going to ask about this, and the other colleagues are going to ask about this. And it's just so much easier if you had an assistant sort of telling you everything you needed to cover, so that then the actual discussion for the investment is, again, the productivity, the efficiency is just so much easier. So yeah, watch the space.
So
I think it's maybe about...
Oh, go ahead. Go on.
Just maybe very quickly, it's about delegating the tasks we don't want to do to our dedicated assistants, right? Part of the due diligence is fun, you get to meet people, part of it is incredibly, painful. Same way, looking for a job, right? Who enjoys looking for a job? No one really does. So wouldn't it be better if you have an avatar and the company also has an interviewer avatar and they do the first round of interviews and actually only people, once there's a good fit, they go to the second round. Similarly, in Alchemy.ai, we are building avatars for dating where the two avatars can have the first date. And if there's chemistry, then we introduce you for the second date, right? So a lot of tasks that as humans, we don't particularly enjoy doing, we will be able to get our digital twins to do those for us.
Okay, we're putting a lot of trust in our avatars here, aren't we? Avatars, digital twins, whatever. I mean, what are we going to call them? Assistants? I mean, they need to come up with a name, right, for what they're going to be. Okay, so we've been talking a lot. Let's get some more questions from the floor because we're coming close to the end. Come on, Adam, run over here. Man with the green shirt.
That's me. Okay, I saw you first.
Thank you. Before this wave of LLMs and generative AI, from a philosophical point of view, everyone was talking about how creativity is this thing that makes us different from AI. And funny enough, when these engines came out, one of the first outputs were these visual, very creative things that they were doing. So my question is about future of work, like 20 years from now. If AI agents had a real-time data inputs, just like ourselves, is there anything that they can't do eventually? And what does that mean for us?
Oof, who wants to go first on that one?
You got us to be quiet. Maybe I tackle that. I wish I knew, because if I knew, I would make a lot of money. I think things are changing at a pace, like Georgina just mentioned, that it's faster than we ever seen. I feel that I'm an engineer, so I'm not creative at all. But now I actually feel that I'm creative because I have DAO-E that I can make beautiful pictures with. And I can even write. Because I can put all my thoughts and then get that beautifully written. And even with my accent, I'm training my voice recorder with my own accent. And actually, I can now see the patterns of where my accent is incorrect. And I can, for the first time, and I've been speaking English for a long time, I actually managed to correct a few things I never even knew it were wrong about the way I speak. So, I'm a little bit of a dreamer. I hope technology is going to make us better. It's not going to be the end of us. But who knows, right?
Martyna.
Well, that's a tough one. I think it's kind of the goal to create like this super brain, super computer and create something that is going to be far, far, far more intelligent than we are, because we assume that we are the most like intelligent in the universe right now, kind of. But but the thing that humans are not good at is storing data. So that's the huge difference. Like we have limitations. If we need to have 5 tasks and 5 people need to check what to assign where, we're going to be fine. If it's 500, we're definitely not going to be able to do it. So there is this possibility that AI is going to be there to do certain things for us. As for creativity, it all comes down to, again, what data was fed to the AI, right? So I think at this point, because if you think about it, how much data could be stored, how much data could be processed by AI, we always saw the limitations, right, of our compute power and all of that. Like, this is why 30 years ago, it wasn't this revolution, the revolution wasn't happening, right? And right now, the problem is that we really don't know what is the end of it. We kind of assume that probably in 10 to 15 years, we're going to be able to make the next jump and create something that is far more intelligent, far better than humans. But then the first thing in theory it should try to do is please create something even better, right? And where does it end? How does it impact us? So I think, come back to the creativity bit, there was even, I think, let's say, a bit of opposition from all the different artists, like, you're using my content to create something, and it's actually, this is my footprint, this belongs to me. And I think this raises so many different questions, because then what would you say about the person that is inspired by somebody else? Would you raise the same concerns that you are using, you're being inspired by me, therefore like this should be mine? But about AI, this is what is being said. If you use a certain imagery to be inspired, it's going to be like it should belong to the original author. So I think we don't have the answers yet. And it's going to be a tough conversation over the next couple of years as AI gets better at those things and is being used for that. But those are yet to be answered, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think a lot of the consciousness question comes down to whether you believe that consciousness is substrate independent. So can consciousness exist on silicon, or can it only exist in our wet brains? I think most of the evidence I've seen points to it being substrate independent. So consciousness could exist within a silicon system. So then you're down to, can you create a system of sufficient complexity to allow consciousness to emerge? If you believe consciousness is an emergent phenomena versus something mystical or magical. So I think everything points to yes, it's absolutely possible to create machines that have the level of consciousness we do. The other thing humans are really bad at is communication. Like our communication is awful compared to machines. So our data transfer, data storage, extremely poor. So everything points to the fact that once this AGI problem is cracked, once we have a sufficiently powerful machine, it is going to develop a superhuman level of consciousness very quickly. We're very much now, though, locked into the neural network paradigm of doing this. And there's big questions over, can neural networks scale to be able to do this? But there are other ways of doing this. So there's techniques like active inference. There are some really promising companies. I was just with the founder of one of them this morning, using these different techniques that are mapping different approaches to the brain. So, I mean, really watch this space, because I think what we've seen from neural networks can go a long way. The computer's getting bigger, and there are more techniques coming as well. And yeah, I don't think there's any limit to what the machines will be able to achieve.
Manjari.
So I agree with what's been said. I don't think there's going to be any limit at all. But I do hope that, you know, both the population at large as well as the government take more ownership of their own data. So I mean, I stopped using a Facebook account 17 years ago. Don't go into Facebook, don't go into Instagram. And that was a very conscious decision, just because I didn't want my data to be collected, my preferences to be collected. Now you could argue that was not a good thing to do, because, you know, I'm not able to keep in touch with as many people as I could have kept in touch. But for me, the data aspect was a lot stronger. Now I know I'm perhaps an outlier in that sense, but it would have been a lot easier if I knew that I had control of my own data. And I'm not sure we're heading fast enough in that direction, where people actually realize the value of their own data. And government, I don't think, is, even if it has GDPR, I don't think GDPR is a catch-all either, as frustrating as it sometimes is to implement GDPR. So I think it's those aspects that need to progress a lot more for us to be truly comfortable with using AI.
Okay. And Tugce?
Maybe just very quick one is, you know, I think most of the ideas are already shared. I feel AGI is a bit of a misleading discussion. There are much more important topics we should be focusing on. I personally don't think at any point the models will have their own value systems or their own conscience. They just do what we model them to do. But are there risks that someone can model something to do really evil things? Yeah, of course, you know, and it is going to happen. If you go to a master's program in the UK or US today for machine learning or LLM, 80-90% of the people attending are not from US or Europe, right? So we've got to start really thinking very carefully, like, who is building incredible amount of expertise in this space and what are they planning to do with it? I think that's a more productive discussion in my mind, rather than getting scared that the machines might kill us.
So I think, you know, we know that we don't use the full capacity of our brains. And so, you know, as more and more AI removes tasks from us, there's an opportunity there for our brains to evolve. We know that we're great at evolving, right? And so new things might spark and might happen. And we might actually see, and I'm sure that there are people working on this, implants into our brains, where we've kind of got a secondary environment happening within that then sparks something else, and we're taking control, or you know, we're directly feeding into it and growing it, and that's helping other things happen that will make us become more creative. That's where I personally think, you know, we could see things moving.
Only if that implant is interfacing with an LLM that's running on OpenAI infrastructure or Google infrastructure, we're not in control. It's actually how that model was trained, which is now directly interfacing with our brain.
Oh, absolutely.
So that part is really terrifying.
Oh yeah, it's sci-fi stuff, but you know.
That's happening.
Yeah,
it's happening now.
It's happening now. Right, so we are at time. Where is Adam? I can't see. Oh, there he is. Thank you so much, panel, for such an incredible discussion. I hope that you all found it really useful.
Yeah, thank you all. Great. Hello. Yeah, great event. Great panel. Thanks so much. And now we will have a presentation about innovation from IBM. So thanks to the panel. One last round of applause. Cheers. Thanks to everybody online, many hundreds of you, which is great. We are just doing some tech issues. I think it's all okay now.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming, by the way. What a fascinating panel, first of all. Amazing. I think some of the notes that I've taken started with ethics, good practice for businesses, then about value judgment, IP ownership, then the digital twins and how interviewer and interviewee both would be AI models, and then back to the governance of data and taking ownership of our data. So amazing panel. Thank you so much. I am Nayan Kale. I look after sales for Bowmen Group, and I'm here to introduce Bowmen Group. Bowmen Group is co-hosting this along with IBM Arrow and Startup Network Europe. And Bowmen Group, we are a governance, risk, compliance, AI, and ESG solution services IBM partner. We've been around for 8 years, roughly 35 consultants working from UK, Netherlands, and India. We are one of the, I think IBM can vouch for it, we are one of the top IBM partners when it comes to governance, risk, and compliance implementations. All the founders are ex-IBM, basically. I think I'll skip that slide in terms of EU AI Act, probably this is more about governance and cost of AI, the topic that we're talking about. The case has been made already for governance, and Mark will talk more about the IBM proposition, the what's next proposition for the entire spectrum of AI governance and AI development, basically. But what I would cover here is what's next. Governance itself is a platform which will help you deal with some of the compliance challenges, right from managing your, in terms of compliance, managing your regulations and policies, to proactively detecting risks and monitoring the fairness and biases and drifts and any other matrix you want to monitor from the LLMs, and also the overall life cycle of those models. So that's one part, but Mark will cover the whole thing. And Mark is head of data and AI for the EMEA partner ecosystem at IBM. There was a mention of the internet era during the discussion. So Mark started his career by trying to convince people to have their own web pages back in the day. And he was not allowed to register vw.co.uk as a domain name, for which he had to then get the rules changed. And now again, he's probably writing the rules for the AI governance, is how I would say. So welcome, Mark.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Thank you. Yeah. So changing the rules again. It was an interesting story. Trying to imagine the concept of trying to persuade someone that having a website, persuade a international corporation that having a website is something that they might need, right? That's, I mean, it's weird to think that that was a time, right? So, but we all had to start somewhere, and that's where I started. So, so my name is Mark Osborne. I lead our ecosystem sales organization in EMEA for our AI and data software brand. And my role is working and partnering with organizations across Europe and helping them leverage our technology to embed it in their own solutions, and also working with our customers to leverage that to enhance their business innovation. So it's been a bit of a ride for IBM over the last 6 to 9 months around the whole AI sort of boom, shall we say? We've been very well positioned here. We've seen some fantastic growth. We've seen a lot of customers and partners working with us, and so you know, a lot going on. But actually, it goes back a lot further, because in fact, to 1956, and we may go back further still later on in my presentation, so watch out for that. But 1956, right? IBM scientists invented the term machine learning, right? And then some of you who are old enough may recall Deep Blue beating Garry Kasparov at chess, although he claims he wasn't beaten. It's a whole story, you can look it up. And then there's some American game show called Jeopardy, which I never quite understood, where you've got to answer with the question and stuff. But anyway, IBM Watson beat the reigning champion of this game show, right? And all of these are exercises in machine learning, artificial intelligence capability. Now we can continue with that theme coming out of our research labs. Actually in Haifa, develop a tool called IBM Debater, or experiment called IBM Debater, which was designed, and this is back in not that long ago, sort of 2017, to engage in formal academic debate. So you could give it a sort of a moral discussion and engage with an academic debater on that. And that was all around developing technology about natural language processing, and something called large language models was built into that. And that was quite a useful, quite a successful experiment. We then brought that into our product, which was the IBM Watson Assistant, which is our chatbot platform. So we're kind of taking stuff we're doing in research, we're bringing it in and continuing that tradition. Last year, we launched What's Next, which I'm going to be talking about a bit more today, which is our platform for generative AI. So we're always taking what we've done in our research, what we've developed, and bringing that out very quickly to our customers to benefit them in their solutions. And now we're engaged in thousands and thousands of generative AI pilots and projects with our customers this year. So we all know the opportunity for generative AI, right? Sort of, there's always that headline number, 7% of GDP growth, right? But where's that going to come from? And maybe savings and efficiencies that we can get from applying generative AI to business, right? So stepping away from the kind of, you know, writing essays and doing poems for fun, but applying for business. There's a big opportunity there. We can all see it. However, we're not seeing the adoption happening because of effectively, you know, FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? Ethical concerns, pricing, complexity of getting the data in. There's a whole bunch of barriers to adopting generative AI, risk, governance. We've talked about that a lot. We're going to talk about it some more. And in the end, it goes back to ancient history. I said we go back further than 1956, right? We go back to 1864. This gentleman, Mr. Charles Babbage, and he designed the first computer. He never built it, didn't quite have the skills to actually build it together, although there is a model of it in Bletchley Park near Milton Keynes, so you can go and see. But he designed this concept, and everyone's very excited about it, saying, wow, this is amazing, you built this computer. And just harking back to the discussions we had about consciousness and so on just now, people asking, well, if we put the wrong information into this magical machine of yours, Mr. Babbage, will the right answers come out? And he said, you're nuts. Why would you even think that? If you put the wrong thing, why would it? It's not magic, and Gen AI is not magic. Nothing's magic. You have to put the right data in, and the age-old principle of computing applies to generative AI as much as it does with anything else, and that is very simple. Garbage in, garbage out. Everything we've been talking around governance, about copyright, around the provenance of the data, it all goes back to this basic principle. Whatever you put in, you're going to get out. So you've got to make sure that you spend a lot of time thinking about what you're going to put in, right? Otherwise, you're going to end up with these sorts of the wrong kind of headlines, unlike the nice headlines I put up about IBM at the beginning, right? So this is where we don't want to end up. So trust is absolutely at the core here, right? Because without trust, there is no adoption. Without adoption, there is no usage. And without usage, there is no return on investment on our amazing generative AI tools. So we have to create that platform for trust, right? And that involves having some ground rules. And in IBM, we're very clear about the fact that data and insights that people derive belong to their creators. It's a basic principle of AI in IBM. So we don't reuse, we don't harvest people's data to feed our models when they're using our technology, right? It's your own data. The other purpose is that it's about augmenting human intelligence, right? It's not replacing, it's about augmenting. It's always about adding on, right? And the last point is it must be explainable and transparent, right? So those are our root principles of AI. They have been for a long time, even before the current generative AI hype began. And that's why we've taken those principles and we've created a platform for generative AI with these 4 differentiating features, right? And people asking, what are the feature functions? How is IBM better than this? Basically, it boils down to this, right? You can get into the detail. It boils down to these 4 things. First of all, openness. That means both open in terms of the platform. So it can be in any cloud, including the IBM cloud, but it doesn't have to be on Azure, AWS, whatever you want it to be. Your own cloud, on premises, wherever you want it to be, in your own private vault, which is compliant with your own sovereignty and privacy requirements. Also open to any model. So yes, please use IBM models. They're great. We can talk about that. But use Llama 2 or 3. Use any of the models out there on the Hugging Face library. Any model you want. Bring your own model even, right? Open to any model. Trusting, right? So yes, we indemnify against people who, if you're using our model, the same as we do with our software. But also we're fully accountable about the data sources we bring in. And we have a platform for governance to ensure your overall deployment can be trusted. And targeted for business, right? So for business use cases and business domains, and therefore empowering users to actually be creative. So those are 4 important principles, and they flow into everything else we're going to be talking about. So where are we? Where do we see AI for business today? Well, we see it, we're very much moved from an era where you kind of had AI and machine learning as kind of an add-on, something that you might kind of tag on to the end of it, to being something that's core to business, to actually build from AI from the ground up. And there's a kind of, you build using a kind of what we're calling an AI ladder, right? And this is where we are. We've started off before the Gen AI boost, there's this beginning point, right, where you're very much focused on collecting and organizing, growing the data. Vitally important. Your data foundation has to be there. The companies that are being successful and actually turning generative AI into real business benefits are the ones who've spent the time to structure their data and to organize their data, their internal data, the digital oil that is their business, and leverage that. Those are the ones who are being successful. Once you've got that foundation, and that takes some time and quite a lot of work, then you can start building up on the generative AI ladder and adding AI to applications, starting to automate your workflows, eventually replacing the workflows, getting to the point where AI does a lot of the work, right? And brings in a lot more automation. So what are we seeing? So we did a survey with our research unit from our IBM consulting group, talking to various different leaders of where they see the productivity benefits, right, of generative AI, and that's where we see, that's where the economic value is going to be in business, right? It's going to be about productivity benefits. The areas: IT processing, IT automation, customer service workflows, supply chain benefits, HR, sales and marketing, operations, finance. This is what business leaders perceive are going to be the benefits. So where are we seeing the initial projects happening? Top 3, right? And this is not exclusive. This is the only places. We'll talk about some others as well. But the top 3 entry points for business to leverage generative AI, and there was some discussion about this, you know, as part of the debate earlier. But just to kind of echo that, we're seeing these 3 areas. So human resources automation, right? Inside IBM ourselves, we've got a tool called Ask HR. Pretty much everything from finding about how to claim my expenses through to promoting, going through the process of promoting someone, is done using our Ask HR tool, which is a fully automated AI system, which is a conversational tool. That's a very straightforward example. And that 40% improvement productivity is an internal metric. Customer service, that is where you're seeing both internal and external. It starts with the chatbot, but moving out to actually assisting agents, ensuring you've got compliance when you're in conversations, right? In regulated industries, we talked about the gambling industry at the beginning, right? We're from regulated industry or financial services industry. You're actually monitoring the conversation that the agent is having, using natural language processing, ensuring you've got compliance from end to end, and verifying that, right? So that's an automation that is adding immediate value to the business. And that, the sort of 90% of inquiries handled, that's real customer data. I think that might be from Vodafone or NatWest, I'm not sure. I don't know, Generali Poland, they changed it. But anyway, it's from a direct customer quote. And then lastly, app modernization. So that's development, code generation. That's, again, a very easy starting point, because at the end of the day, large language models are about language, and it could be just as much about computer language as human language. And there's many more, right? I said those are the top 3. It's all right. You will get to drinks. I'm not going to go through every single one of those, okay? I just wanted to show, because somebody said, well, IBM's only doing 3 different use cases. No, there's lots, right? Okay, so this is based on projects we are doing with customers. It's not stuff we dreamt up, right? And some emerge. I mean, one that's emerged that's not even on there actually is legal, right? It's huge. We've got so many projects and so many partners now working with legal companies, LLMs, developing all kinds of different solutions to accelerate. And we talked about paralegal processing earlier. It just coming out the woodwork. So just a couple of examples. I tried to pick some kind of from different sizes, right, and different types, because there's a long list of kind of scenarios where we're working with customers. So NatWest, classic sort of automated chatbot, automated customer service example. We've been working with them for years and years, right, way back to the original Watson Assistant days. We talked about, with the project coming out, the project debater technology. We worked with them during the pandemic to help process mortgages for people during the pandemic when branches were closed, right? the platform was already in place. We just added in that capability, integrating it into their backend systems, right? So that just happened, and it continues. Great example of that. So, big customer. Various NHS trusts, right? Saving money in the HR processing in different scenarios. Very practical, very pragmatic stuff. Sevilla Football Club. There's an example of a data-driven business, right? The management of Sevilla Football Club have actually, they set out to become a data-driven club in terms of their talent development, right? So they've got all kinds of training data, information about players, styles, various football jargon I don't begin to understand. I'm a techie, I don't get football, but it's also very technical. And they've actually they've got all that data documented. One of our team from Spain, who's a fan, reached out to the manager there, and they said, look, I see you're data driven. We've got great technology to leverage that and help you with the selection of players. And he said, okay, come over. And they did a design thinking workshop with them, and now we're working with them to help select players, the right kind of players. So the coach can say, right, I want to pair with, I don't know, who can score goals really well in this particular way, right? And they go, oh, we've got this up and coming player here, bring him up through the process. So it's a HR story at the end of the day, right? But with a football club. Completely different, different scale, different size. ABP, right? They're a startup out of Austria, working with patents. So they've got a platform for if you want to actually verify whether your patent is going to be appropriate as a new patent, right? Is it original? You can use their platform to verify that. It's all done using they've got their own private proprietary patent database that is highly confidential. They would not put that into any cloud provider. So they actually have got that, decided to go completely on premises. So we've got a server from us in place, technology, and they're saving 70% of patent lawyers' time, which is worth a fair amount of cash, and providing a great service for customers across the German-speaking regions, right, in Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. So again, it's quite a small company, very different from that West or Sevilla Football Club, slightly larger, NASA, and we've developed the geospatial foundation model with them for working on global warming predictions, and so all of their satellite mapping data, it's a complete visual model. We've put that into the public domain with NASA, right? So from one spectrum to the other, so different type. I wanted to just give you a little flavor. Adobe, of course, well known. They're leveraging our AI with embedding it with their system, similar to what we're doing with, for example, SAP, right? So big to small, right? It's what I would say, all kinds of different use cases, give you a little flavor. And of course, we're drinking our own champagne, right? I touched on that with Ask HR. But a lot of what we're doing is also internal with our CIO office, our software development teams, when they do training for the likes of me, right, and our sales organization again as well. So we see ourselves as client zero for all of our technology, and we're applying it. And of course, most importantly, our governance platform as well is core to that. So let me talk about product for the last section here, and what it is we have on the truck, right? So we brand our generative AI products as Watson X. Basically, it's part of a platform. We make it available, as I said, on any cloud. So it's built on Kubernetes containers on Red Hat OpenShift, which is, of course, part of IBM. So that's our chosen containerized platform, which means we can take it anywhere, right? We also make it available as a SaaS on Azure, on AWS, and on our own cloud as well. So that's the kind of the base layer. On top of that, we've got our data fabric. That's about getting your data right. So that's a range that ranges from knowledge catalogs to databases, all of that basic technology. We've got a data lakehouse solution called What's Next.data. If you know what that is, if you're interested, we can talk about that. But that's all about that base foundation data layer. Really, really important. We do all of that stuff, provide the connectivity into the backend systems. What at IBM we've always done incredibly well. It is core to our strength, is providing that linkage, not just talking and having a conversation, but actually also doing, right? Not only can I ask about how do I do my expenses, I can initiate and go through the process of doing a promotion because it's linking into Workday, right? And actually doing it, right? And that's kind of the difference, right? It's actually that application part of it as well. So then we've got our generative AI platform. We've got what's next.ai, which what's next.governance. And then we've got our APIs and assistants that allow you to embed it in your own technologies. And then we've got what we call our assistants. And they're the experience layer, right? And that's the front end where you normally get started. Let's just dig into that a little bit more. So what's next.ai is our platform for generative AI. It's got two key parts to it. The first part is it includes our foundation model library. And we make available our own foundation models. So we've most importantly, Granite, which is a foundation model that's been trained on cleansed data plus specific legal text and financial data. So it's particularly applicable to business use cases and very efficient, very fast. In fact, it outperforms Llama 2 and 3 in financial services and coding use cases, right? So it's a very business targeted. Remember I talked about open and trusted and targeted? It's about business targeted, cost effective model. So that's in there. Alongside we give access to Hugging Face. We give access to Llama 2 and 3. We give access to a range of other models, Mistral as well. We're all in there as well. You can leverage. And then there's a set of tools to allow end users in a no-code, low-code environment to actually do model tuning, prompt. We've got a prompt lab, we've got a tuning studio. You can either just add in, do some RAG, retrieval augmented generation, some prompt tuning, or you can even start building your own model, right? And there's a bunch of ML ops technology in there as well, data science technology there as well. So that's what's next. It's the tool set. It's the toolkit that allows you to build your generative AI solutions. And that's what's really important is we've got, this is our principle, and I've just mentioned it again, right? We say you can bring your own model. You can use an IBM model or some other model from open source or commercial, right? Or to use the IBM models. So, and the point is there's no one model to rule them all. I talked eloquently about our Granite model. It's great for financial and legal cases, right? However, it's not so good at, I don't know, mapping, right? You might want to use the NASA geospatial model for that. And there's 1,000 other open source models out that you probably know really, really well. So bring the one you want, right? And use it within our platform and tune it and evaluate it and use our tooling to do that. So that's what's next.ai. Next, and we touched on this at the beginning, what's next.governance? So we are the only enterprise vendor on the market that has got an end-to-end governance application that runs on any cloud and on premises as well. Okay, there are lots of other governance vendors in the market, and there are also hyperscaler competitors who have got governance capability within their tooling. But there is no other vendor that has the same comprehensive capabilities that we have and will work with any of the other vendors. So we're quite happy to provide governance on an OpenAI-based solution that's got no other IBM technology in it. You can run this by itself, do nothing else IBM, just use our governance technology, absolutely fine. We welcome that. So it's completely abstracted. And what it does, so at a very high level, explain it to the executives, it's like a nutrition label for your AI, right? Tells you what's inside it. So it provides the documentation, the facts, right? It also provides risk governance. So you know whether you've got drift happening within your model, and outlines the potential risks available, what warns you of reputational challenges you might be facing, and so on. It helps you comply with the regulations. So it's specifically designed to help you build capability, and we've got models around it to comply with the EU AI Act, for example, and also other emerging regulations. So it's flexible to adopt as regulation comes around. And it also helps you sort of operationalize your AI as well. So it's got all of that capability in one tooling. And the background to this is we've been doing AI governance for years, right? So this isn't new to us. This is kind of old hat. What we've done is added the capability for managing generative AI on top. That's what's new, right? So what's next.governance is based on a long history of technology, right? And those of you who may have heard things like Open Pages was a historical product, all of that capability is in here, right? And we've got deep expertise in this area, right? We are recognized by the analysts and the wider community as being knowledgeable in that. And again, we drink our own champagne, right? We've had a AI ethics board since 2018, right? Not 1856, but it's a while, right? In AI terms. And we're involved in legislation on panels in Europe, UK, and in the US, contributing to that, right? So we're at the heart of this discussion. One thing you might want to look at, the IBM Risk Atlas, worth an explore. Just it's a tool we put out there, so you can actually look into what are the potential risks at different phases of AI development. Sort of head over to that and have a little play. It's a nice little hands-on tool. Applies to anyone, not just people using IBM technology. So just something we put out there. So just fine, and then finally, our AI assistant. So this is the experience layer to generative AI. It's a set of tools to help you get started fast. And what I like about this particular slide, it takes me back, right, to the persuading people to have a web page. The beginning of my career, once I got beyond over that hurdle, we were selling portals and web content management tools. And we were talking to corporations about how let's unify your processes on the glass, connect with all of your systems, and we all have wiring to connect them. And you can actually do it using a web application, right, to help automate and accelerate your processes. Now we've gone to the next stage. We are basically selling the same stuff, except we do it using, natural language, right? So we're now here with AI assistants actually giving that aid and providing that connectivity back into your systems. So we've got 3 areas for AI assistants. We've got business process automation tools. We've got a tool called Watson Orchestrate that's got those connectors into SAP, into Workday, into all of the other regular technologies that you have in order to help automate processes and get you started super fast. You don't have to do that coding. There's connectors already there. And it's got a nice low-code environment. So if you think about something that might be helping you do Copilot, you're on your way. This has actually got the proper connectors to help you do it in a business environment once you've finished playing. We've also the other technology in there is Code Assistant, which is available for Red Hat Ansible for coding and development. And we've also got a capability there for the mainframe because we're IBM. Which is helping our customers actually convert their code from COBOL into Java. Whole nother story, but you can imagine there's a lot of organizations for whom that's very, very useful. And then we've got some new product coming soon later this year around BI Assistant, which is helping customers who are doing financial planning, right? And that will be available shortly, but it's accelerating that. So the point of the assistance is to get you started, right? So the Watson Assistant, which is our original chatbot tool there, can actually most organizations start with that. It's got the full generative AI natural language capability, but you can get started without having to do a lot of coding and development. You can just scrape a site, load in a bunch of data using retrieval augmented generation, and you could immediately get up with a very effective conversational chat tool from within a few weeks, right? So it's a great tool to get started with. So just summarize IBM What's Next. You can select the models you want to use. You can scale your AI use cases faster, and most importantly, you can implement with trust, right? And so I think that's our key differentiator, right? Trust, governance, and the ability to work in any cloud or multiple different clouds with different tools, with different environments, not just locked in within one hyperscaler vertical, right? We give you that flexibility. So hope that's been useful and interesting for you. If you've got any questions, you can come and meet me afterwards over drinks or over coffee or any of the other IBM team. But it's been great talking to you today. If you want to go and try out what's next, you can head over to ibm.com/what's next. And have a great rest of the evening. Thank you.
Well, brilliant. I want to say thank you to everyone who came here today, despite the train strikes in London. This was a fantastic turnout. And thank you, the people online. Hundreds of you joined today, and I'm really appreciative. So yeah, we're doing more and more AI events, AI startup events as well, in London and across Europe. AI is the biggest thing right now, and very excited about it. So thank you everyone for coming. Cheers.